Hello, True Health Seeker. I have a very exciting announcement. I have spent over a year, I've spent about 14 months collecting all of my information that I use with my clients for ending anxiety, and I created an online program. I'm very excited about it. We just launched it. And for you, for free, I have a webinar where I teach you 2 powerful mind tricks for removing anxiety, ending worry, and controlling fear so it stops controlling you and your life. In my free webinar, you will learn what causes anxiety and how to stop it, the science behind the mind-body connection, overcoming fear of public speaking, getting unstuck, ending that fear of things not working out, ending procrastination and overwhelm, and feeling excited, grounded, and calm instead of fear and worry. I have so much to teach you in my free webinar, and I'm really excited for you to come check it out. Go to freeyouranxiety.com/webinar. That's freeyouranxiety.com/webinar, or look in the show notes of today's podcast and you'll see the link there so you can jump into the webinar and learn all these wonderful, powerful tools that will end your anxiety and create excitement and happiness instead. Go to freeyouranxiety.com/webinar and sign up now, and I look forward to seeing you in the next live webinar. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 253. Well, we are in for such a treat today. We have with us an amazing doctor, and as I've said on the show before, my 2 favorite doctors are chiropractors and naturopaths. So we have with us a chiropractor. I love chiropractors. They've saved my life so many times. A lot of people think that chiropractors are just that they live in the physical realm in terms of physical manipulation, but there's so much more than that. They have such a deep understanding of the body and how you can support the body in healing on a way that other doctors don't have that insight. And so we have with us an amazing chiropractor, Dr. Darren Schmidt. Really excited to dive into the subjects we're going to talk about today. Man, you have such a wonderful understanding of how food and shifting our diet in different ways, manipulating our diet to support healing, is really fascinating. So I'm really excited to get into that. And you also have a deep understanding of like parasites and mold and stuff that a lot of people don't realize is at the root of their issues. And so they're going from doctor to doctor and drug to drug for many years, being unable to finally figure it out. And then they come see you and you're able to help them get to the root cause, which is really exciting. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, I'd love for you to start by sharing your story, because I see a lot of healers, whether they end up becoming doctors or maybe they already are doctors, but what has them shift their journey is their own personal healing. And I know you had issues you had to go through which helped you become a better healer. So what happened to make you want to become a chiropractor and then make you shift how you practice medicine to support people in the way you do now?
Well, I didn't really have a moment in my career when I went from conventional to holistic. I actually grew up on a commercial farm, and I started working there when I was 9, but I have memories of following my dad around at the age of 6 or whatever, and I saw things related to spraying chemicals on fields, and then the bugs would grow back faster. And
Wow.
I observed that something was wrong, and I knew at the time my brain worked differently. So so I was in college and I had a choice. I could become an optometrist, medical doctor, chiropractor, and I went into chiropractic school. And but I had never even been to a chiropractor, and here I am in chiropractic school, not knowing what the heck I was actually doing. So halfway through that, I went to a seminar given by Dr. Joel Wallach. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. Yeah, so
He's one of my heroes.
oh yes.
I've studied his work for the last 7 years. It's because of him that I reversed all the
Oh
medical
boy.
issues I was facing my entire life. I've actually traveled with him.
Oh,
I love Dr. Wallach. Absolutely amazing doctor. So it's so cool that he influenced you. So you went and you saw his
right.
lecture?
Yeah, so one lecture came home from that like I'm going to be a chiropractor who focuses on nutrition. I made my mind up right from that lecture. So when I graduated in 1997, I did conventional chiropractic for 1 year, and then I went to a seminar. I learned muscle testing. I learned some product lines, 1998, and then I just started in 98. But I started studying nutrition in 1994, even before I went into school. So I did muscle testing and supplements, and I was looking for techniques. I found one in 2004, which was great. It helped me figure out cases for the next 10, 12 years. And then I realized the limitations. So I looked for a different technique, a way to figure out what a person's body needs, what their organs need, and why. But what really changed my professional career in the last 2 years, actually started in October of 2015. I started getting heart palpitations and pain.
Mm.
And by January and February of 2016, it was just 10 times worse. And February 3rd, 2016 was the worst night of my life. My blood pressure was 155 over 95. I couldn't sleep. My heart was pounding. I had chest pain, left arm pain, left jaw pain, anxious thoughts. I had no appetite. My feet were swollen, and my temperature was down 2 degrees. And it's just getting worse. Like seems like day by day, and certainly, week by week. Now I had tried to fix it from October through February, and I have a machine that measures plaquing in the arteries and the health of the heart. And I've always had a really healthy heart. So it wasn't my diet. I mean, I have not eaten bread and sugar and pasta. Like I don't buy bread or pasta and bring it home. I never order it at a restaurant. And so, I've always done like low carb, and I knew it was my heart. So like atherosclerosis or heart disease. So what happened was on February 4th, the next day, I was going through my notes and I found a series of recommendations from a seminar I had attended a few years earlier. And it was some supplements, some protocols for the heart. So I started taking them. And then within 2 days, I knew I was on the right track. I felt better. And so I thought to myself, well, the person that put these supplements together obviously knows more about my health than I do. And I know a lot. I study all the time. And so I went back to the notes and I started studying beriberi because that's what the notes said I had. And so I got books on beriberi. Actually got a book from University of Michigan Historical Medical Library on beriberi, which summarized all the research worldwide. And after reading that, I was like, that's not it. I don't have beriberi. So what happened next was I went to the guy that actually created the supplements back in 1934. All those products came from that era. And now I don't get paid to promote this company, but it's Dr. Royal Lee from Standard Process.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been using their products my whole career. And so the solution was kind of like right under the nose. Now, as I started reading through that material, we're talking the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and he wrote articles between 1958 and 1961 summarizing all of the medical and health and nutrition research for the previous 100 years. He wrote these through 1961 because in 1962, he lost a Supreme Court case and was forced to not talk about nutrition or his supplements ever again.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Similar with Joel Wallach, except he fought and won the FDA, I believe it was 7 times. And then
right.
the eighth time, the FDA withdrew their fight because
Oh, yeah, they
Dr.
stopped.
Wallach brings big guns.
Right,
But yeah, I mean, when you stick your neck out and when you're healing people with natural medicine, that really harms the profits of big pharma. They'll come after you, and big pharma uses the FDA to come after you. And the FDA should be there to help us regulate an industry to make sure things are clean,
right,
like homeopathy, for example. I don't need them to regulate homeopathy to take it away from me. I need them just to make sure the rules are in place, which they have been and been successfully working, so that if something is arnica 200, then it's arnica 200. That's
right.
that's the amount of FDA interference I need. but for them to come in and try to silence a doctor from helping to heal disease like beriberi, which is a B1 deficiency, thiamine. That's, and you've got, rickets, and think about all the other deficiency diseases that are well documented. And so, but a doctor to be able to come forward and say, I can sell you my thiamine to cure your beriberi disease is illegal.
Right.
But an MD can say, here, let me give you this drug to manage this disease, and that's not illegal. And there's even
Right.
some, and you say, oh, well, but the doctor doesn't make a profit from the drugs. Well, chemotherapy are one of the drugs that the oncologist actually makes. Every single dose of chemotherapy, and a patient might get 8 doses, 16 doses, there might be many rounds of it. Every single round, every single dose of chemotherapy, the doctor makes thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
It's a mortgage payment.
It is. It's
You bet that they're going to be motivated to give chemotherapy. And
right.
and yet this other doctor wants to make a profit of 30 cents to sell his thiamine to someone with beriberi disease, and the FDA goes, you can't do that, and you have to be
Right.
silenced. So it's sick and wrong, but
Right.
I'm glad you're here today to shed light on this. So
Yeah. And
what did
but I was going to say that back then it wasn't necessarily the FDA, it was really the heavy hand of the AMA. And at the time there was a
mm,
guy named Morris Fishbein, and I think he's the Hitler of medical history. Anyways, but he's the one that personally attacked Dr. Royal Lee.
mhm.
Yeah. Go ahead with your question.
Oh, no, I was just I'm glad you clarified that, because I do remember there's a handful of holistic doctors 100 years ago that were really making headway, and you're right, it was the AMA that really came after them. But even but the chiropractic profession was being assaulted for many years.
Right.
And so, even to this day, MDs will say, "Oh, don't go to a chiropractor because they're a quack," and of course now that's illegal. They can't say that. But for many years they were, and they tainted the impression that people have on that profession, which is really it's really sick and wrong that the marketing the AMA used, even the AMA actually used marketing to sway women away from midwifery care towards hospital care for births. And then they used the twilight sleep, which basically they took women in labor and put a bag over their head, chained them to a table,
Oh,
or to the bed, to the hospital bed, and then gave them this drug to make them pass out for 2 days, and they would leave them there alone, laboring in a kind of unconscious state.
wow.
And this was what it's called. You can, Google, it's called twilight sleep, but this was incredibly inhumane. And they would market that midwives were witches that would bring third world diseases to these American women, and don't see a midwife. It's so
Huh.
unsanitary to have a home birth, right? And they used
Right.
all kinds of marketing. It's examples like, they use marketing to sway people against natural medicine, homeopathy, chiropractic medicine,
Right.
herbalism, so that you would go and buy some pharmaceuticals and go to the hospital. And so it's
Right.
clearly the AMA has not had good intentions in the past
Right.
when it came to our health, and yet now we
Right.
sort of are been brainwashed a lot as a nation
Right.
to
Yeah.
we've been brainwashed to think there are these, good, these organizations are like our parents, that they have really good intentions and they look out for us, like the CDC and the FDA, and that they really care about our health.
Right.
And
So, yeah,
it's scary in that way.
let me add to that. So, back okay, so here's the deal though. So I didn't have beriberi, but let me talk a little bit about that. So it was 1934 when they put vitamin B1 in bread. Before that, talking the Great Depression, you
Mhm.
got 8-year-old and 10-year-old kids with severe chest pain and heart disease that couldn't afford meat, they couldn't afford vegetables, so they only ate bread, and they were dying of beriberi. So
Mm.
now, so they put it in bread in 34, and the scientists and everybody was like, "Okay, we're done. We're awesome, and we saved a lot of lives," which is true. But by 1940, and this is known before 1934, but in 1940, and I got these old books. I have a few dozen now old medical nutrition textbooks from prior to 1960.
Oh, that's
A
so
lot of
cool.
Yeah, and they knew that there were 50 to 100 B vitamins, and they would complex with each other to form different B vitamins. These are complexes that would change. So when Dr. Roy Lee put together his B multi B is called Cataplex B, and it's got the first ingredients liver, it's got nutritional yeast, and it's got defatted wheat germ. So there's no like they don't put like niacin, and I mean there's like I don't have the label in front of me, but they have a really small dose of some of the synthetic B. But the point is, you get all 50 to 100 B vitamins in the liver, nutritional yeast, and defatted wheat germ. So that was one of the 5 products that I took beginning February 4th of 2016. And so that kept me going through the summer of 2016. So I'm going to finish my story here on the change in my professional career.
Mm-hmm.
But what was interesting through the summer was that if it rained, I felt worse and my pulse would go up. So,
Ooh.
and one day I worked outside for 6 hours or 4 hours or something, and I came inside and my pulse was 130. I took a shower, now it's 120. And it took another day for it to get down below 80.
Oh, wow.
And normally it should be 60. So I'm like, what's going on? Like, I'm still missing something. So then I went to Florida for a couple weeks in August. That's a humid, hot basement. Florida is. And I felt horrible. And I'm trying to go to bed and my heart's pounding and taking more of these supplements. And it was October of 2016 when I found the black mold in my office by the window where my desk was. The window had been leaking for for years. And I moved my desk in there about a year before my symptoms started. So a lot of things came into play at that time. Okay, so there's causes of disease, and then there's the mechanism of disease. And this is what I figured out from Roy Lee and all these doctors, Dr. Henry Harrower. He's the father of endocrinology. I have his practical endocrinology textbook from 1931. It's 650 pages. And he talks about lactic acidosis. That's the mechanism of chronic disease. The father of holistic psychiatry, Dr. Hoffer, talks about it. I have just references in old books and stuff where it was the thing that everybody was trying to fix was the mechanism of chronic disease. They didn't know about causes. They didn't talk about mold, parasites, mercury. I mean, mercury was figured out by Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt. I think it was in the 80s. So it's kind of like back then they were trying to fix the mechanism of chronic disease, and then that was forgotten after 1960. And then the causes were they've been figured out in modern times. And what I'm doing is I'm combining both the mechanism and the cause, the several causes of chronic disease. And now my results are better than ever before. The last great breakthrough in lactic acidosis is actually Cataplex B from 1934. Now, there's a few other supplements on the market. I helped a company called Systemic Formulas create a product called B16, which has 16 B vitamins in it. It's the best in that category. Like, I don't know if you want to use the word synthetic versus whole food, but so I use that in my office too. But so anyways, there's solutions for it. And when you have black mold in your body, there's a author named Jane Lim. She's got a book called The Most Common, the Most Deadly, talking about mold. And she said mold will cause the formation of lactic acid and methane and carbon dioxide. And the whole point here is that your blood gets dirty and you have a deficiency of oxygen in the blood. That makes the cells starve and then they die. And now you have organ death and tissue death and body death. So Ashley, you with me still? I don't know if I'm
Absolutely. No, I've got a series of questions to ask to clarify when you've completed.
okay. But so when I read these lines, this paragraph from Dr. Roy Lee from an article he wrote in 1960 called Exercise and Nutrition, he explained exactly what was going on with my health and seeing patients full time for 20 years doing hardcore holistic nutrition. for 20 years. Like, I haven't accepted a new chiropractic patient in like 12, 13 years. You know, people know when they come to see me, this is for nutrition. I figured out all kinds of cases that were kind of stuck. So lactic acidosis is the reason why people get cold when they have hypothyroidism. It's the reason why muscle problems are so common with various diseases like chronic or fatigue. People also get fibromyalgia or chronic muscle cramping or muscle wasting when the hormones, like testosterone is low, or cachexia. Cachexia is basically lactic acidosis accelerated. So it's such a big missing link in all of healthcare. And when you go through PubMed and you look up lactic acidosis, there's no solution for it. They know that you can't just take baking soda to try to lower the acid. You can't just take, there's a drug called DCA. You can't just take DCA to lower the lactate. Okay, you got to actually fix the organs. So Dr. Henry Harrower, back in the early 30s, said there's a thyroid gland and it has a cleaning effect on the blood. The thymus gland, the adrenals, the parathyroids, the spleen, they all clean the blood. They all have to be healthy in order to keep the blood clean. And if the blood's not clean, you get cell starvation and cell death. So that's the thing. That's what I figured out.
So I've got a series of questions. Starting with, for those who don't understand or have never heard of lactic acidosis, like, we do have a lot of health professionals listen to the show, so I know that some people, but then we've got people who never heard of this. So for those who've never heard of this, can you explain what is lactic acidosis?
Yeah, so technically, it's a high amount of lactate in the blood, and there's also some acid there. Maybe it doesn't have to be acidic. So here's where it typically comes from. When you're eating excessive amounts of carbohydrates, the cells go through glycolysis in the cytoplasm of the cell, and it turns sugar into pyruvate. In that process, there are waste products that form. Lactate is one of them. Now, 75% of lactate goes back into becoming a fuel, and 25% of it needs to be cleaned, and it has to be cleaned by the liver and other cells. But if you're kind of toxic or your organs aren't working very well, the lactate starts to accumulate in the blood. And if you're eating a lot of sugar, and even though your liver is working well, you can still accumulate too much lactate in the blood because you're just eating too much sugar. So the point here is that you have excess lactate. Now, there's 3 other waste products related to this. Alcohol is one of them, ethanol. Acetaldehyde is another, which is the hangover feeling. And then acetate. So think of the hangover feeling when people eat too much pasta and now they're sitting on their lazy boy chair and they're flipping through the channels and they're in the food coma and they're a little bloated. They're in the brain fog. Maybe they have a headache later. Okay, that's acetaldehyde. That's ethanol from eating too many carbs. So now in that process, though, of turning sugar into pyruvate, there's also acid, hydrogen, H plus. So back in the 30s and earlier, even in the 1800s, they looked at the substance that was formed in a diseased state, and it was sort of milky, and it was sort of acidic and foul smelling. So acid, acidosis, that means like vinegar. And the lactate comes from the fact that it looks sort of milky. So it's like sour milk or sour yogurt. So that's where they came up with lactic acidosis. So now if you just expand on that a little bit, now that we know more about how the blood can get dirty, you could say, well, even though the lactate level is normal in the blood, you could have other waste products. You could have the carbon dioxide, you can have the methane, and you can have, of course, the ethanol or heavy metals or chemicals. So you got toxins that prevent the blood from carrying the oxygen to the cells. And the blood is dirty anyways. So now the cells are trying to absorb oxygen, but there's not much there. And the cells are also trying to dump their waste into the blood. Well, they can't because the blood's dirty, it's hypoxic, not enough oxygen. So the cells are holding onto their toxins, and this every cell in the body, and they're also not absorbing oxygen. So now the cells they're starving. So here's the kicker. Here's where disease actually arises now. So the cells are they got a decision to make. Do they turn to lactic acid fermentation, or do they die? Okay, now Dr. Otto Warburg, the father of physiology, figured out how cells turn into cancer. It's lactic acid fermentation. So the cells are using lactate as their fuel, and there's no oxygen, right? So this is an old physiological process that our cells used to do 2 billion years ago on the planet when there was no oxygen in the atmosphere. So there was no oxygen, and they're just fermenting, a sugar. And then now in our bodies, our cells will convert to that. Now, the moment you add oxygen back in, the cells are supposed to go back to regular glycolysis and mitochondrial energy production, which requires oxygen. But if the cell does not convert back to regular metabolism, even in the presence of oxygen, that's cancer. So that's what Otto Warburg figured out, and it took him 8 years, and he got the Nobel Prize on how the B vitamins play a role in this. How the 50 to 100 B vitamins can actually very very much help reverse that lactic acid cycle. So the cells become normal metabolism instead of this ancient 2 billion years old cancer-like metabolism.
Unbelievable. So in the 30s, Dr. Otto Warburg, published his findings, and because of his findings, he was acknowledged by the mainstream medical community at the time for these findings. And yet now here it is, not even 100 years later, and no one's heard of that. We've got the war on cancer and billions of dollars being raised on the war on cancer, and yet no one's heard of this information that was already discovered in the 1930s.
Right. Yeah. So Otto Warburg was a total lab junkie. He never married. He worked 6 days a week, full time, and he was a Jew in World War II Germany.
Wow.
And he didn't leave Germany because he's like, I got my job to do, and basically you're going to take care of me. So Hitler put him on an island north of Germany and whatever the sea is, and they protected him, even though he was a Jew. Hitler's like, yeah, you're doing God's work. So the Russians came in, defeated the Germans on that part of the country, ransacked his lab, took his stuff, sold it, threw it away, whatever. 6 months later, took Otto Warburg to dinner and apologized. And they knew that he was doing God's work. So 5 years later, he reopened his lab. But the point here is that he would do one experiment 100 times before he published. And what he said was like the way it was. And people don't like that. To be so forceful, like, hey, this is how it is. And so when he died in 1970, then there were attacks that came, people attacked him, but they waited till he died.
Wow.
Okay. And then there's Thomas Seyfried. You know him, right?
No.
Dr. Thomas Seyfried. So he's a oncology PhD researcher, and he discovered Otto Warburg, I don't know if it was 15 years ago. And he wrote a book called Cancer as a Metabolic Disease.
Okay, I've heard of that book. I just didn't remember his name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so Thomas, he talked about it, and I heard about Thomas, and other people talked about it. So the point here is that it's spreading now, right? This type of information. But let me just jump into part of the solution. Well, one of the solutions is taking the 50 to 100 B vitamins, like with the few supplements that exist that I know of. The other solution is ketosis. So that's where you're just, the sugar in your blood just drops to super low levels. The ketones go up. Your body's burning fat. That right there, if you can make that work, which, it's not that hard, that's the end of sugar metabolism. That's the end of the production of lactate, of acetaldehyde, ethanol, and acetate. That's like one of the most important things that you could do in order to stop this downward spiral of disease. Like the lactic acid cycle is actually known, it is the same as cachexia. It's the same thing. And cachexia, for those of you who don't know, is how the body dies. Cancer cachexia. When somebody has a heart attack, it's cardiac cachexia. You start losing weight, your muscles are wasting away. And so, once you get into cachexia, there's only so much you can do. You want to prevent that. So, where was I going to? I was going to go somewhere else with that. But the point is, the point is we can just basically reverse engineer the cycle of body death by knowing the facets of lactic acid fermentation, the lactic acid cycle, and then the ways that you stop it. So I should stop right there because you probably have like 5 more questions.
Um, I think a lot of people have heard of lactic acid, like, oh, you work out and then you've got a muscle cramp. Oh, that's the lactic acid. Or massage therapists know that the knots in your muscle might be crystallized lactic acid. So we've heard of that when it comes to exercising. That
That's
someone
close. Let me stop you there. So when your muscles are sore, let's say you run, you sprint, and your muscles are telling you to stop. That's the lactic acid. And it can leave your muscles pretty quickly if you're healthy. And but if you're sore like a day later or 2 days later, that's the acid part. So
Mm.
yeah, just to clarify that, that's a
So,
technical
so
point.
someone who's like on an alkaline diet and then they go to a spin class or they drink alkaline water, right? Because they're really aware of, you know, acidity in the body. But they go to a spin class and 2 days later they're sore. That's the acid that's still hanging in there.
Right, that's the acid hanging in there.
Got it. And
Yeah.
you mentioned that there's several organs that clean the blood of the lactic acid.
Well,
Um, or they just clean the
yeah.
blood in general.
In all cells clean everything, and the liver does the best job. But even brain cells can detoxify. So the point is you want to have your body able to clean as much as possible. So when you're working out and you're sore for 5 days, that's, fibromyalgia patients, might experience that. That means that the acid is like stuck deep in their muscles and they're not able to clean it out because their blood is dirty. And how do
Mhm.
you clean the blood out? You got to fix the organs up. So what's causing the organs not work right? Well, there's 3 main causes of chronic disease. One being excess sugar metabolism, which I just talked about. Another being toxins, whether it's heavy metals or chemicals. And the third one being what I call hidden infections. They're hidden from the medical doctor. So the fungus and the parasites and the virus, sitting in the lungs that may cause asthma. So those are the 3 main causes of chronic disease that can. Okay, so you got to think like this, like you got the causes, and then you got the mechanism of chronic disease, and then you got all the thousands of symptoms
Yeah, and
and
MDs just treat
diseases.
symptoms. For the most
Right.
part, MDs are going after the symptoms and they're like 2 steps away from the actual root cause.
Well, this is true too for the holistic doctors too. I mean, in the holistic field, the attempt is, I've seen it across the board to try to get to the cause, right? So, but the patients demand it. I have this pain. You need to fix me. And so, like, whether you're allopathic or holistic, it's like, okay, I really want to get this patient better.
Mhm.
So it's easy to go to try to treat the symptom. Okay. But to maintain the integrity of, all right, let's take a step back. You got 10 symptoms and you got one cause for all 10 symptoms, So yeah, I love how you began this interview, by the way. I love chiropractors too. I love naturopaths. Yeah.
But you're
I,
right. You're right. It's not just solely in the allopathic realm that to treat symptoms. Because and
right.
you're right that the patients do demand some results because we as patients want to no longer be in pain, and of course the good-hearted doctor really wants to help us.
Right. And
Um,
it's still valid to try to treat a symptom in the way of this, like you're trying to feed the organs that are causing the symptoms, right? Because so the heart gives out certain symptoms. So I had the black mold in my heart, and I took some heart supplements and I felt better. But the moment I worked in the basement once because it flooded and it was all like moist and damp down there, and it was horrible, like because I didn't get to the cause because I didn't know about the black mold in my heart at the time.
mhm.
So it's still valid to try to take care of symptoms by addressing the organs, as long as you're still addressing the cause and making sure you are addressing the mechanism too.
Now you said there's three causes to this. So the hidden infections like mold, mildew, or parasites, even viral and bacterial at times.
Right,
There's too much sugar,
right,
too much carbohydrates at the at one given time,
right,
and chemicals like heavy metals or
right,
parabens, PCBs, or just breathing in exhaust and or farming chemicals, that kind of thing.
right.
Uh, what about the fourth one, which is nutrient deficiency? There's, like, as
Oh yeah,
Dr. Wallach says, there's 90 essential nutrients the body needs, 60 minerals, and we're not getting it if we don't consume massive amounts of vegetables from many different regions to to try to accumulate all
right.
these minerals. Or you talked about how these 100 B vitamins in the supplements are from nutritional yeast and liver, but could a nutrient deficiency be the root cause?
Yeah, definitely. So in my system, where I wrote out three major causes, there's actually okay, and then the mechanism, and then the organ support to try to help with the symptoms. The nutrients are in there. It's the whole thing.
Mhm.
It's all nutrition, right? So it's all encompassing. So I'm with you 100%. But
Now
but when it comes to like three major causes of disease, those toxins and those bugs, they can block nutrient absorption. They can block nutrient utilization.
mhm.
So yeah, we're both right, but I have a system where it's like I actually put the nutrients at the bottom to try to feed the organs. Okay, but it does belong to fix the mechanism, and it does belong to fix the three major causes too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm dealing with mold right now, and it's just amazing how many people are suffering from mold, and they don't realize that it's not just external. The mold gets inside you like a parasite or like, of infection. And it's pretty amazing how they're just kind of bumping around our everyday, like go into a basement. We don't realize that we're catching like a parasite or an infection. We're catching mold, and a lot of people are walking around for years having a viral issue, or like Epstein Barr, for example, or parasite, and they don't realize that that is really um, eating away at their health, and just removing that element is hugely healing. Talking about the B vitamins, so like I have a high respect for supplements when they work, when the body needs them, in conjunction with a good diet. Obviously, we can't out supplement a bad diet. But these B vitamins, these 100 B vitamins, can we get them from our food? Like if someone ate lots of, a variety of fruits and vegetables and maybe some organ meats, because you mentioned the liver, could we obtain all 100 B vitamins every day if we ate that way?
Yeah. So nutritional yeast, organ meat, especially the liver, and then wheat germ oil. Those are the three main foods to get the B vitamins from.
Wow, so not like kale and bananas.
No, not necessarily. No.
Now you'd mentioned endocrine disruptors. Is it that the mold or the parasites are endocrine disruptors, or the environmental pollutants, or is lactic acidosis an endocrine disruptor?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So, okay, let's talk about lactic acidosis. So the blood is dirty, and there's not enough oxygen, and then the cells start to starve and die or turn into cancer. So this includes the adrenal glands, the thyroid, the brain, the kidneys, all the organs, all the endocrine organs. So here's my viewpoint on this. You got to fix the cause and the mechanism, and then you feed the organs. And then the organs get better and they start to make their own hormones correctly. So it's kind of like, and let me back up a little bit too. So the muscles, you got pounds and pounds of muscle in your body, but your adrenal glands are little tiny. Your thyroid is tiny. All the endocrine organs are the pituitary, they're tiny. It's the muscles that are affected most first. And that's why I brought up muscles before, like fibromyalgia and muscle cramps and muscle wasting, muscle fatigue and weakness. And so, and let's talk about the heart. So the heart is a muscle. So the heart is beating all the time. And the heart cannot stop and convert over to lactic acid fermentation like other cells might and turn into cancer. You've never heard of heart cancer. Primary malignant heart cancer barely exists. It may show up a few times a year in some major hospital systems, but it's because the heart muscle cannot stop and reconfigure its engineering to lactic acid fermentation. So what it does when it starves, it just stops, it just dies. So you can have a little patch of heart muscle that's now dead. And then the heart itself is beating differently because there's a dead spot there, and that will throw a clot. And then the person dies. They have an autopsy, and the doctor says, "Oh yeah, here's the clot that caused the heart attack." Well, in actuality, it was the lactic acidosis that killed a little bit of heart tissue that made the heart beat differently, a change in the hemodynamics, which then caused the clot to be thrown. So this was figured out decades ago. I just wanted to share that with you.
It's
But it's,
fascinating. I mean, you're saying it's the root cause of all disease.
yeah. Yeah. And so getting back to your question on the endocrine, like, I know holistic doctors, they specialize in thyroid, and it's really difficult. It's difficult because they're not addressing lactic acidosis, right? Once you fix that up and the muscles start to become less painful, less crampy, then the thyroid's going to get better, or then the adrenals are going to get better. So there's my answer on the endocrine stuff. You got to fix lactic acidosis first.
Right. Now it sounds like this is also the cause of autoimmune condition. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, it is. So I just see autoimmune as being confused white blood cells and dirty lymphatic system and lactic acidosis. To fix, you got to fix the lymphatic system, clean it up, and to reset the immune system. It's ketosis, out of autophagy, fasting to reset that. But that's how I view autoimmune conditions. So back then, I had an employee in my office, and he was a younger guy. He was like in his 20s, and he had a really bad skin condition on his arms. And I put him on some supplements to help that, and he was starting to get better. And then at one point, I realized I touched his hand or something. It was really cold. And at the moment I touched his hand, I knew he had lactic acidosis. So I asked him a question. You ever get chest pain? He said, yeah. And I said, how long? He said, 10 years.
Mm.
So he had chest pain in his teens. There's a lot of guys that have chest pain in their teens because they grew up on sugar. So I was like, okay, let's put you on this supplement for lactic acidosis. The speed of his healing accelerated so fast at that point. That's when I realized, this is so far encompassing. It's cancer, it's heart disease, it's autoimmune, it's fibromyalgia, and I started to compile a list of diseases and symptoms. It's mental illness. And the list got up to 82 symptoms and conditions that are driven or it was lactic acidosis is the mechanism of, and I stopped counting at 82. So there's that. It's kind of everything.
Have
So
you
no,
found a disease that lactic acidosis is not involved in?
that's a really good question. I have to think about that. Yeah, I have. And that is occasionally I get somebody in my office who's really healthy, and you can see it in their face. They're just bright. Their eyes look good, and they have let's say they got some pain, they got joint pain, and I do my muscle testing procedure. I don't find lactic acidosis, and then I find the need for joint support, glucosamine sulfate type supplements, and then they get better, and they're just nutritionally deficient. That's
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you can that's a good point. So you can be nutritionally deficient and not have it cause lactic acidosis.
Right, but if you don't catch it and then years go by, you become more and more deficient, and then you
Mhm.
get it, right? And we're talking about so through the 40s, 50s, 60s, the doctors back then had other theories. They said glutamine deficiency causes it, potassium deficiency, calcium deficiency causes it, and really, it's all correct. But by far, it's the B vitamins because that's what the liver uses to clean the toxins out is the B vitamins. Those detox pathways definitely require B vitamins.
What about those who have like MTHFR, for example, or have, quote unquote dirty genes where they're unable to methylate some B vitamins? What do they do?
Well, take the methylated B vitamins as supplements. So
Hmm.
I'm that. I have that genetic SNP. I did the DNA saliva test and I was positive. So I've been on and off methylated B vitamins for probably 8 years, maybe longer. And I know that when I don't take it, I get pain right between my eyes, like in my nose, like just below my ethmoid sinus,
Oh,
where your
interesting.
glasses sit on your nose. So I just know I'll take that every day for the rest of my life. That's just the way it is.
And could someone get that from food, or we have to have a supplement?
As far as I know, you have to have the supplement.
Hmm.
That's just I could be wrong. I could be, but right now that's what I'm doing. I was giving people supplements for that.
Yeah. So I think
Yeah.
some people would think, well, God didn't make us imperfect to not be able to live off of food. And then my response would be these epigenetic changes happen because of the last 100 years we've been exposed to man-made pollution that
Right.
has caused our genes to be disrupted, and we need to it's going to take sometimes actually generations to reverse that. And so I think, I mean, this is my opinion, I think MTHFR is fairly new. I don't think 500 years ago a bunch of people walked around being unable to methylate their B vitamins.
Right.
But this is just, my observation about epigenetics, which is such a new field. Dr. Wallach actually wrote a book on epigenetics and gene expression, how we can actually reverse some through diet. There was a really neat study which gave me a lot of hope. Because I've reversed my polycystic ovarian syndrome, my type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and chronic fatigue in the last 7 years with diet and supplements.
Yeah.
And the one thing I've really had a problem with is weight loss. I've come up against this thing where I lose between 50 and 25 pounds on whatever, and all healthy ways of eating and exercise, but I get really toxic. I almost get like my eyes kind of burn. I get like flu-like symptoms, and then I start smelling like burnt garbage, like burnt rubber coming out of me. And the second I stop the diet, it goes away. And so I was thinking, I've got heavy metals. I'm not detoxing. I've got um, you know, all mold and stuff. So I'm like going through like, what is it that my body can't handle when it's having to process the toxins stored in adipose tissue. And so, going through this and looking at I've had to like dive into all this really interesting information. And I come to find that there's this one study where this scientist took this group of mice that were all related. They're all from one litter, so they're all, genetically related. He took half of them and just as a test, just gave them regular food and had them live out their little mice lives in a lab, just given water and food. And then the other mice, he exposed them to the amount of PCBs, like, that we would experience on a regular basis. Like if you touch a receipt, you get that kind of chemical coming in your in contact with that kind of chemical. And he just had the mice be exposed to the amount of that we would have on a regular basis, like as humans in living in, North America, for example.
Right.
And those mice, their coat, their fur turned from white to yellow. They all became obese. They all developed thyroid issues.
Mm.
And they were fed the exact same amount of food, the same type of food. So it was
Mm-hmm.
one endocrine disruptor, one chemical. That's it. That's all it took. And it even went so far that genetic, it actually changed a gene.
Mm-hmm.
And that gene lasted for 2 more generations of
Right.
mice. But the hope is the good news is that when they detoxed it from their bodies, their genes reverted back. The epigenetic change happened, and their fur turned white again. They lost weight, and the thyroid started working again. And
Right.
that's just one chemical of the 30,000 plus chemicals that we are exposed to, plus parasites, plus heavy metals, plus mold. I mean, there's a lot of stuff our body has to deal with. And then on top of that, if we're not handling all this, the bombardment of stuff being thrown at us, now the lactic acidosis kicks in, and then the cells can't. I like the analogy of they can't bring the groceries to the front door or take the garbage out the back door. Like you're saying, the
Right.
cells can't bring in the oxygen and they can't get rid of the waste, and that causes cell death or cancer. And we're
Right.
wondering why one in I think it's almost half the population now. There's statistically saying that about half the adult population is expected to receive a cancer diagnosis in their lifetime
Right.
currently.
Yeah. So, so this brings up an interesting case study that I had. This woman had lung cancer that metastasized to her brain, and so I had her cycle ketosis on a daily basis. She was eating food 4 hours a day and fasting for 20. And during the fasting time, she was eating 6 tablespoons of coconut oil. And 6 weeks later, they did a scan at the hospital, and there was no new tumors, and there was no new growth of the old tumors. And the doctors were completely dumbfounded by this. This is it during the summer of 2016 when I was figuring this all out. So 6 weeks after that, I was seeing them like once a week, every other week. Okay, so after 3 months total, they did another scan, and all the tumors were gone from her lungs and her brain. And she said to me, "But I still cry every day." And immediately I was like, "Oh, that's lactic acidosis, dirty blood, um, starving the brain, crashing thoughts, horrible anxiety, depression, diagnosis of bipolar, whatever. It's all the brain is dying." So I put her on some supplements for the B vitamins. And a few weeks after that, she's like laughing with me. She's making jokes. So, I mean, I had a heroin addict at the time. He was recovered, and he had quit heroin like probably a decade earlier. But he said to me, "I have apocalyptic thinking, like something bad's going to happen." These
Mm.
are the conversations I have with my patients. It's pretty incredible what the thoughts that go through their brain. And so I said to him, "Okay, when you're using heroin, was it helping with chest pain? Did you have a tightness in your chest that that came with these bad thoughts?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, but the more heroin you use, the worse it got." It's the same for cigarettes, it's the same for psychiatric drugs and alcohol. They ease the pain of lactic acidosis, but in the long run, they continue to deplete B vitamins out of the body, and they just make it worse and worse and worse over time.
Oh, I get it. So if someone has lactic acidosis, it causes them to feel like depressed, for example, or anxious. So they self-medicate with drugs or alcohol or food, like sugary substances that would increase our dopamine response.
Right. Or
And
Prozac.
or so yeah, or so they're self-medicating or they're getting on pharmaceuticals, which then further causes more lactic acidosis, which then would further drive them deeper into their the self-medication or drive them deeper into their addiction.
Right. So this was figured out in the 1940s. Yeah.
Oh, oh my gosh. I feel like there's a whole world of information because I think we've been raised to think that everything before 1980 is ridiculous because they didn't have like computers. They didn't
No,
have
these
Google. How could they possibly have figured anything out before 1980? And they flew to the moon with a computer.
yeah.
I know there's people that believe we haven't been to the moon. I'm not taking sides here, but supposedly we flew to the moon with a computer that was basically had the amount of data entry as a little calculator,
Right.
but I think we've been raised to believe that if it's anything before 1980 kind of like couldn't possibly contribute to society
Right.
because it didn't have Google or didn't have computers, right? And yet
What
now we're
right.
finding out that they really did discover the root cause of disease in the earlier part
Right.
of the last 100 years, and now it's been kind of covered up because there's a new drug they've got to roll out to make profits from.
Right. Yeah, so I looked into this myself. I just think that back then as a group, people were just more ethical and
Yes.
just more wanting to help people. But yeah, let me explain a little bit more about the whole mental illness thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I had mentioned earlier that when you got dirty blood that's hypoxic and the cells start to die or they turn into cancer, it's the muscle cells. The muscle cells are more likely to die rather than turn into cancer. Okay. So what happens when muscle cells die? They tighten up. So most people know this as rigor mortis. So you got a dead body on the floor, and within an hour or two, it's stiff as a board.
Mm-hmm.
And then like 2 days later, now it's really loose because the muscle proteins have broken down. But rigor mortis happens in your chest. That's why people get angina, and that's why they get anxiety. Now there's kind of three locations for anxiety. One's in the stomach, one's in the chest, like above, sort of in the center at the top of the breastbone, and the third location's in the brain. Okay, now the word anxiety actually means tightening or narrowing. So just imagine the muscle cells are tight, and their heart starts fluttering because the heart muscle is a little tight, and they get this little pressure, and their lungs, their diaphragm, and the muscles between the ribs are now tight, and they can't breathe. They're having a hard time breathing, and they're driving down the road, and they're thinking they have a heart attack. They call an ambulance or whatever. They go to the hospital, and the doctor says it's not your heart, it's in your brain. Go see a psychiatrist. It's not their it's not that. It's lactic acidosis. It's the muscles actually becoming narrow and tightening up. So I saw a cardiologist, a friend of mine, a holistic cardiologist. I love him to death. His diagnosis was esophageal spasm because my esophagus was tight. And I thought to myself, what about my left shoulder? What about my back? What about my neck?
Mm-hmm.
What about my calf muscles? I had a deep ache in my calf muscles. Everything was tight from dirty blood. So this explains anxiety, anxiety attacks, panic attacks,
Unwarranted
generalized.
ones, right? Like if
Right,
someone's if they just lost their job and they don't know how they're going to pay their mortgage payment, that's like clearly we know where the anxiety is coming from. But you mean like the kind of panic attacks that you're sort of like sitting there and all of a sudden you start feeling it and you're like, I have no reason. I
right,
love my life, I have a great everything. Why
right.
am I have a friend who's going through that, and I told her it's not anxiety. I said there's no, it just hits her sometimes in the middle of the night and her heart races.
See,
And
if it's at night, it might be the mold because mold loves
mm,
dark and warm. But let's back up a little bit on this. So, okay, so imagine you're at a party in somebody's house, and I got all these people. They're breathing in the oxygen and they're expelling carbon dioxide. So your blood is already hypoxic, and maybe you already have too much carbon dioxide in your blood. So you start sort of breathing deeper and gasping, and now you got lactic acidosis going on in your brain. You go, I got to get out of here. I don't know why. Get me out of here. Get me out of here. So a psychiatrist would call that, social anxiety or whatever. But it's still lactic acidosis, and it's exacerbated by a stuffy room. Now, if you have somebody who's um, in their house and they get a phone call, and let's say they got a fan blowing on them, they're comfortable, and it's their boss, and the boss says you're fired. Okay, you hang up the phone. Now your cortisol goes up. That's your adrenals kicking in. It's been proven in two different studies, one from the 40s, the other one was from 1962. The adrenals, the cortisol going up can increase lactate production times 5.
Oh, wow.
So that's an exacerbation of lactic acidosis and from this bad news. Now, but let's say you're super, super healthy. Your adrenals are good. Your blood is totally clean. All your organs are working really well. And you get some bad news. Ideally, you don't have any physical reaction. I mean, you cry, you have emotion or whatever, but you're not having heart palpitations. You're not having, skip beats, tight muscles. Okay, ideally, that would be the scenario. And that's how I lived most of my life. I get bad news like my grandfather died, my cousin got into a car accident, he died. My best friend committed suicide back in '01.
Oh.
I never had muscular tightness. I never had anxiety. I had grief, and then, a few weeks later, I'm done. I learned in school, in chiropractic school, that, if you're still suffering from grief like 3 to 6 months later, there's something going on behind the scenes nutritionally. And I've had this with many patients in the past. I had a woman come in. She was in her early 30s, and she said to me, I'm still grieving from the loss of my father a year ago. And I put her on some supplements to help her adrenal glands. And, 3, 4 weeks later, she says, I'm done grieving
Mm-hmm.
for the loss of my father. See, so there's like a lot of emotions that are actually, they're persistent because of the nutritional deficiency and organ dysfunction. Now, I just want to say I don't treat emotions. There's a lot of people in the holistic field that do. And I mean, the truth is, at what point is an emotion unacceptable? Like, I think treating emotions is sort of like chasing symptoms, You see what I'm saying? So people have their emotions, and I'm like, okay, that's their state. And what am I going to do to fix their adrenals or their thyroid or the lactic acidosis, feed their liver, get their physical body as healthy as possible and stay away from the emotions? That's my viewpoint.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Um, a lot of times people will see that their emotions that are following them or that they can't resolve or they can't, like, they're stuck in something. Like, my husband and I figured out early on in our marriage that every argument we had was actually related to blood sugar. And
Oh,
when
yeah.
we both cleaned up our blood sugar, that all those weird fights where we were like, "What are we fighting about?" Like these little petty, like we'd start picking at each other. We're like, "What is that?"
Mm,
And we really realized that, like, man, I bet a lot of marriages end in divorce simply from blood sugar. They don't someone doesn't realize that their ups and downs of blood sugar causes us to feel like manic, causes us to have feelings of being almost bipolar.
yeah.
Now, what about blood sugar? How is blood sugar affected by lactic acidosis, or is it the other way around that lactic acid does lactic acidosis affect blood sugar, or does irregular blood sugar affect lactic acidosis?
Well, I don't really have an answer for you because at the same time I was figuring out lactic acidosis, I was also incorporating ketosis into my
Mm-hmm.
practice.
Mm-hmm.
So ketosis, you lower your blood sugar, raise your ketones, and that solves that.
I definitely
So
want to talk to you about this. So I used the low carb, eating healthy carbs, so like lots of leafy green vegetables, for example, were pretty much where my carbs came from. And I ate between 25 to 50, never more than 50 net carbs a day, all from vegetables and also like low glycemic fruit, occasionally, super occasionally. And I did paleo slash, intermittent keto. Um, and I did something like 12 eggs a day with runny yolks to for a few months. That was from Dr. Wallach. And I use that to reverse my PCOS. I totally do not have it.
Yeah.
Blood work and everything confirms I don't have it. And I had it for many years. And so I use that high healthy fat diet, low carb diet, to reverse my type 2 diabetes. And but then I know, and this is the last 7 years, right? And then I noticed, and it was on and off, and then I noticed my blood work recently, because we were really into like almost the David Asprey like bulletproof coffee kind of way of doing it for for the last year, like 2017.
Yeah.
And then we got our blood work back, and my husband and I both had kidney damage, I had big liver damage, really like higher elevated, markers for heart disease. And so we're like, whoa, we need to make adjustments, obviously. And now we're eating more whole food, plant-based.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't want to call it low fat because we're eating nuts, seeds, and avocados, for example, right?
Yeah.
So, but we're not doing keto right now, and
Uh-huh.
playing with it, seeing what happens, right? With seeing what happens in the next few months with our blood work. So I'm not saying I'm against or I'm for keto. I think it really has its place, and I especially believe that it should be done under the supervision of a doctor, because I think if done wrong, we can either not do it right or do damage.
Right. Well, did you cycle ketosis?
Yeah, so I did it.
Okay.
I would do that. I would kind of go into it, and I did some intermittent fasting. But I know it's like I'm going, there's got to be something I missed to be able to have done this much damage. I should have been more like maybe doing blood work every 3 months or something. But just looking at making, where did I go wrong? Just what can I incorporate to do it correctly?
So,
And then on top of that, I've interviewed some cardiologists lately and some professionals like Dr. Esselstyn,
yeah.
who promotes super low fat, um, and whole food plant based, and he gets really good results that way. So I'd love for
Right.
you to talk about, like, what about those people that go 100%, let's say, like vegan but no processed food. So even though they're eating a lot of carbs, their carbs are coming from whole foods.
Right.
Is that diet naturally low in lactic acid, or is that still too many carbs?
Well, the vegan diet cleans the blood,
Mm.
but I don't know if it really stops the lactic acid formation. So, but what my contention here is that the vegan diet, plant-based, is better than the standard American diet, but cycling ketosis is better than a vegan diet. And you can combine veganism and cycling ketosis and do both. But I think the missing point here, I don't know if you know this, but for so long, and even today, people think that a ketogenic diet is high protein. So
Mhm.
I would never recommend the eggs are not ketogenic. Eggs have too much protein.
Mhm.
So in the 1920s, let me share some history. So there were fasting clinics all across the United States that the government shut down between 1909 and 1918.
Mm.
And so they used these fasting clinics to cure epilepsy for kids. And they were then beginning to understand ketosis. So the ketogenic diet was back then, it was called the diet that mimics fasting. That's what they called it. So here we have the 1920s. There's no more fasting clinics. And there were two doctors. They both had different equations to measure the macronutrients to get people into ketosis well. And one was Dr. Wilder, I think 24. The other one was Dr. Woodyard. I think he was 1928 or 29. I used Dr. Wilder's formula. It's the same formula taught by the Charlie Foundation. Have you heard of them?
No.
Yeah, they've been teaching parents how to get their epileptic children into ketosis since I think the mid 1990s. So it's basically you look at fat grams and then you compare that to the grams of protein plus carbs, net carbs. And so it's fat versus protein plus carbs. And I tell my patients to get into a 2-to-1 ratio. So 2 grams of fat versus 1 gram of protein plus carbs. Now, that's ketosis for most people. And if somebody's got a more severe condition, heart, cancer, diabetes, they're going to go for 3-to-1 or 4-to-1. So they're going to have way more fat. So you're lifting the fat grams up so that your blood becomes fatty and the sugar and the protein go down in the blood. And now the cells convert into burning fat because that's the only fuel that they have. And now it's burning the fat that's embedded in your abdomen, in your liver, in your arteries, in your pancreas, causing diabetes. It cleans the body of the fat. Now, I think you had told me, okay, let me just say that the vegan doctors say that disease is caused by fat in the cells. It's a true statement. And their answer is you eat a bunch of plants, no fat, basically, or very little fat, and it'll clean the fat out of the cells. That's a true statement too. The other thing is, what I'm saying is you raise the fat up way, way high, still eat produce, it's low carb, lower to moderate protein, and you get the same exact result. But I think only better because now you're in ketosis and ketones kill cancer cells and your body's now eating away excess pathological tissue. This is how I get rid of fibroids and cysts and skin tags and moles. And of course, the fat cells get smaller and the tumors get smaller. I've had 7 patients reverse their cancer by doing ketosis and fixing lactic acidosis. So what we're talking about, I think it's best stated by Dr. Budwig, and she's a cancer researcher. She was part of Dr. Otto Warburg's team back in the 50s and 60s, and she's got the science of adding the right types of protein and the right kind of fat to really eat up cancer tumors, and she published that back in the 50s and 60s. But she said this statement, there's a statement that's so confusing to people that it's derailed nutrition research for decades and decades. And here's the statement: fat causes disease, and fat can reverse the same disease. Okay, so imagine the fat in the cells causing disease, and then you have a lot of fat in your diet. You get into ketosis, and it cleans up all the fat in the body.
Including the fat in the cell?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that this is autophagy, where the body is, when it goes into a fasting state or a ketogenic state, that it takes a few days, but then it starts to like eat up the. It's amazing. I love when maybe you could explain it a little bit for those who don't know
yeah.
what autophagy is, because I think it's such a cool self
Well,
cleaning
yeah.
mechanism. It's like a self
So,
cleaning oven.
right. So it's a bit different, though. Autophagy is different than simply ketosis, where the fat gets burned up as fuel. So, okay, let's just talk about let's say you're doing a 5-day water only fast. Okay, so day 1 and day 2, people get hungry, and this is typical, and they're craving food. And then day 3, now they're in ketosis, and they could have really good ketone numbers. On a blood test at home, you can measure, like, let's say it's 4, which is a great number. And now their blood sugar is dropping down. Let's say their blood sugar is 50. Okay, totally healthy. There's a guy named Dr. Dominic D'Agostino. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's gotten his blood sugar down to 2, and
Wow.
his ketones are like 6 or whatever, 7. And he's an endurance weightlifter. He's got the world record for endurance powerlifting. So anyways, so day 3, you're in deep ketosis. Day 4, this is when autophagy starts. So the cells are dying. They break open and they spill out the minerals and the vitamins and enzymes, which are basically a bunch of vitamins all put together, and DNA and other stuff, proteins, okay? And then on day 5, you get this upsurge of stem cells, new, naive cells that don't have DNA. They don't have vitamins and minerals, but now you get this DNA, let's say liver DNA, enters one of these new stem cells, and now you got a liver DNA or a liver cell. And then it starts absorbing the vitamins and minerals that are being recycled by the dead cells. So that's basically autophagy.
So is
And
that day 4 that the stem cell shows up?
that's day 5.
Day 5. So on day 5, you're and it doesn't matter how old they are, like they could be 55, 25, 105, their body will create new stem cells.
Right.
And those cells don't have parasites and mold and heavy metals in them.
Right.
So you're really
And yeah.
regrowing a whole new you.
Right. So this is your personal challenge when you start to lose weight. Your body's releasing toxins into the blood and into the lymphatic system, and you have some issues with actually getting them out of your body. So that's where, just really good nutritional supplements come into play to assist your body in that way. And I've seen this with patients where they do some kind of it could be a fast like that, or it could be, 10 years ago, there was like, what was that? It was like a 500 calorie diet with the hormones, not growth hormone.
Oh,
I don't think.
HCG?
Yeah, HCG. So I had patients do that, or something similar, and man, they looked horrible, and they were toxic, and they were tired, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we got to detox you first,
Mm-hmm.
including of the mold. Yeah.
Amazing. And so what, I mean, couldn't someone just fast for 5 days?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. That's a super powerful tool. Yeah.
So, I mean, versus keto, is there a benefit over fasting? I mean, is
Yeah.
ketogenic diet better than fasting, or is it the same as fasting?
It's similar enough. And the point here is that the ketogenic, I'm going to call it the lifestyle. Ketogenic lifestyle is something you can do, for years and years and years. So, and in that time, you can do a 5-day fast. But what do you do when you're done with the 5-day fast?
Mm-hmm.
So
Go
you
back
do
to
like,
McDonald's.
right. So you do like the base is paleo/low carb with lots of produce. That's the base. And from there, you can go into ketosis with your diet. You can stop eating and go into ketosis that way with a fast. You can go into ketosis with endurance exercise, but the base is always like paleo, low carb with lots of produce.
So this specific diet, so this, like you said, the foundation is that low carb, meaning like grain free, processed
Right.
food free, sugar free. And so the foundation of the diet is lots of vegetables, right? Maybe
Yes.
do you recommend some fruit or certain types of fruit or no fruit?
I just say fruit as a dessert, but everybody's different. So, I got patients with 4 clogged arteries around their heart, and they're non-surgical. They can't do anything about it with surgery. So I tell them absolutely no fruit. Eat produce. Do the ratio of 2-to-1 fat versus protein plus carbs. Do fasting. I put them on supplements. But yeah, in that case, no fruit.
Got it. And have you seen people reverse their heart disease and no longer have clogs in their arteries?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, verified by medical testing. Right.
It's really, really,
For
really
and
exciting.
and that, so I've always had an interest in heart myself because my grandfather died of a heart attack, and
Mm-hmm.
um I don't know. And I had a issue with my heart. I have a scar over my heart from when I was 14, and that scar itself caused some chest pain in my 30s. And with muscle testing, I found I had to treat the scar. And so, but that kind of like led me into, fixing the heart up. But even 10, 12 years ago, I was helping people with their chest pain and getting rid of that with supplements and diet changes. But now I just have it more honed in, more specific. I know more like what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I mean, you had mentioned that you, for 10 years, discovered a type of muscle testing that you used for 10 years. And then
Right.
you kind of discovered a few years ago, I think you said about 3 years ago, you discovered its limitations. And now you've been incorporating really your search on how to help people no longer have a lactic acidosis as, as their, because that is the root cause.
Right.
What is the type of muscle testing? Is it autonomic response testing by Dr. Klinghardt, or is it something
No.
else?
Well, it's a combination of several techniques, but the bigger picture is knowing the physiology. So I call this technique follow the physiology. I shorten it to FTP, follow the physiology. So, I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like if you know what happens when the body's declining in health, you just reverse engineer it and bring it back. So that incorporates, if you follow the physiology, it incorporates changing the diet and then detoxing and getting rid of bugs that the body doesn't want. So that's my answer is FTP, follow the physiology. And it's my creation from Dr. Henry Harrower and Dr. Otto Warburg and Dr. Royal Lee. They talked about that. They said you have to clean the blood, you have to increase the oxygen, you have to they did mention, removing toxins sometimes, but they basically told me what to do. And so I labeled it follow the physiology, but it's not really my work. It's their work from 80 years ago. I just wrote it up and made it into a modern technique that I use.
Nice. And you said in terms of diet, I mean, I had Dr. Mark Hyman on the show recently, and he said he basically promotes a pegan diet. So it's like paleo vegan, where, you're eating lots of healthy fats and you're eating tons of great vegetables. Like the produce needs to be, because I think a lot of people think keto is like Atkins, where you have basically like a bacon salad that's just
Right.
a bowl of bacon. And
Yeah.
in my naturopath, when I first learned about the ketogenic diet, she's like, if you're not eating 8 cups of leafy green vegetables, you're not doing it right a
Right.
day. So you can really, like you said, you could cycle from, for example, a vegan diet to going into ketogenic, maybe doing some intermittent fasting,
Yeah.
going back to vegan, because you said it cleans the blood. So someone could do that. They could kind of cycle through these different lifestyles. This could be their
Right.
lifestyle.
Oh, for sure. That's absolutely the way it should be. That's what our ancestors did. So they'd walk upon a batch of berries and eat that for 3 days, go into a carbohydrate stupor, and then, and then not eat for the next day. And then now they're hungry. They see a deer. They eat the deer. So cycling through these types of traditional foods is the way that we should be doing it. So I'll do 2 days straight of lots of plants.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll do meat with tons of butter and coconut oil. So, but I just want to say that, meat it's not ketogenic. So this is the thing that Atkins missed
Mm-hmm.
is he said, eat low carb. And that was it. He didn't say do high protein, low protein, high fat, low fat. All he said was eat low carb. So people said, okay, well, if I don't eat carbs, I'm eating bacon and steaks. Well, that was high protein. So there's the only meat that's really consistently ketogenic is pork bacon. Now you can take a fatty steak and put a bunch of butter on it, but just know, people need to know this, that
Mm-hmm.
meat is not ketogenic. So I made a list of ketogenic foods for my patients, and I did a video on my YouTube channel. It's called "These Are the Ketogenic Foods," and I use an app on the smartphone called Chronometer. It's from Dr. Mercola, and you put your food in there. It'll give you the grams of fat versus protein, plus carbs. And I went through all these foods, and there's a lot of ketogenic plants. Like olives are ketogenic depending on, what's in the jar. Avocados, and then the plant oils, the fruit oils like avocado oil, olive oil, coconut oil. So I eat a lot of ketogenic plants, and then my body I just need meat. So I'll eat meat at least twice a day, but I try not to eat 3 meals a day. I try to eat just twice a day. So I got the intermittent fasting going on. And so now I get into ketosis easily in one day. And what's also really cool is all the benefits then, the endurance. So my favorite sport is weightlifting. And for years and years, I would go for an hour and then be exhausted. But now I can go 3 hours, right, with no food because I'm in ketosis. And then I go run a 5K. And then I don't eat food for another 3 hours after that. And then I have dinner. So I'll do that on a Saturday. And the recovery time is awesome. And like not much soreness. I got a friend, back in 2011, we were at dinner together, and he about had a heart attack right in front of me. He's like eating crabs, and he throws his crab down plate, and he picks up his napkin. He goes, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Let's get out of here. Got to get out of here. He wipes his face. We pay the bill. We get out. We go outside, and I do the muscle testing. I find his heart. I recommend some supplements for him. And then later he told me I saved his life. And like 2 days later, he felt his heart was easier. It wasn't beating as hard. And then he became an athlete. He did an Ironman triathlon like 2 months ago, and not even in ketosis, but I put him in ketosis like 2 weeks ago. He's still doing the same workouts, and he says that his soreness is like gone. He's got no soreness, no stiffness. His body is fluid with fat. I'm such a big fan of eating fat. You got to get all your joints greased up, your brain, your cell membranes, your hormones. That's all fat. So get it greased up. Now, you can do it by eating a ton of fat in ketosis. You don't have to do it all the time, but cycle in and out of ketosis. And otherwise, also to not eat food, go into ketosis that way. And that's how you mobilize the fat there too.
And there's a big difference between the fat that you would get at fast food restaurants
Oh,
versus
God.
the fat that I think people like not, I mean, I think a lot of people are afraid of saturated fat. And I know that coconut oil
Yeah.
is high in saturated fat. And also Dr. Esselstyn believes that consuming oil harms the lining of the arteries, harms that skin, harms the endothelium, and so there's that fear of processed oils. And I know Dr. Wallach believes that we should not consume any oil, even coconut oil, because and he is pro ketogenic. He believes you could do it with butter or ghee. But that Dr. Wallach believes that any oil, oil oxidizes so quickly that if we're consuming oil, we're consuming oxidative damage or oxidative stress to the body. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, there's a couple of things here. So let's talk about the endothelium. So there's a test called the flow-mediated dilation, where they feed people food and then they stress out their arteries by compressing the bicep area of the arm. And then they release it quickly, and they can measure the amount of flow of blood. And the question is, do the arteries open up or do they clamp down? So in the studies discussed by Esselstyn and Dr. Greger, et cetera, they call it a high-fat meal. But, sausage McMuffin with egg from McDonald's, I do not consider that a high-fat meal because of the toxic carbs, like the bread. But, okay, so I think some of those studies are kind of off because of the quality of the food or the mixture of fat, protein, and carbs, right? But here's the thing. Let's say you do this flow-mediated dilation test with just coconut oil. And the arteries constrict. Okay, it's showing that it's bad. Okay, so what exactly does that mean? Does that mean that coconut oil is bad? Or does it mean that the artery is diseased and it has a bad reaction to a healthy food? Okay, so if you look back, like what really causes plaquing and of the arteries and endothelial dysfunction and artery dysfunction, it's not fat. It's the carbs, it's the simple sugars, it's the bad fat, right? It's the trans fats and the Crisco and the margarine. That's, the bad fat. So add that along with white sugar. And people say white sugar is empty calories. Not true. White sugar is the devil's poison. It's very detrimental to health. It's not just, empty calories. So the flow-mediated dilation test, I don't think actually finds cause. Right? You can find a reaction from a food, but it doesn't mean that if a food causes a flunk, if you will, of the flow-mediated dilation, I don't think that actually shows cause. So now let's talk about like Esselstyn and oils and Wallach and oils. I just want to clarify that in the research, I don't know if you've talked about this with any other guests, but there's observational studies and then there's randomized control trials. Right? Have you talked about this before with others?
Oh no, please go on.
Okay. So an observational study is where you have a group of people or maybe several groups of people and you observe what happens. Okay, and it could be in the past or it could be in the future. Let's say you send out a survey of, what foods do you eat and how's your health? And then you separate the people into groups, like here's men versus women, or here's 50-year-olds versus 40-year-olds. The point of this is that observational studies, you cannot get cause. Now, observational studies are cheap and easy to do. They're not laborious. And 90+% of nutrition studies are observational.
Oh.
Okay, here's my opinion about observational studies. Just throw them out the window. And there's other terms for it: empirical studies, epidemiological studies, which is a study of epidemics. Okay, just toss them out the window, because that's what's caused so much confusion over the years, that people say, oh, look, these people eat red meat and they're unhealthy, and these people eat beans and they're healthy.
Therefore red meat's unhealthy.
Right,
But I mean, they could also be doing things like, I don't
right.
know, not
They're not,
exercising, or they could be smoking, or they could be in a moldy house, or they could be
right.
working beside a factory, or they could be working at a airport where they're breathing in exhaust and,
Oh boy,
heavy metals. Like, there's all these,
right.
all these unknown factors. And so it sounds like that kind of study is great if you wanted to prove a hypothesis.
No, you form a hypothesis with
But
observational studies. You can't prove.
you can't play
You
around
can't.
with the statistics and kind of
No,
go and fudge
you
fudge the
can't. You
numbers.
can't. You can. Oh yeah, there's we're not even talking about unethical behavior with the numbers and stuff. So, but there's this concept of controlling. Like in a study, they control for smoking, they control for obesity, they control for exercise, and still the red meat eaters are unhealthy versus the bean eaters. But in an observational study, you still can't say that. The only time that you can say a fact is with a randomized controlled trial, where it's an experiment where you do something to one of the groups of people. So there's I think it's the Women's Health Initiative. It was a lot, lots of women, and in one of the groups, they told them, and they made this happen. You have to reduce your meat consumption by 20%, and they followed them for years and years. And it turns out the cancer rates did not change versus the control group. So that's an RCT, randomized control trial, proving that meat does not cause cancer. So you can see this then with saturated fat. Now there's the Framingham study. Now the Framingham study is an observational study, so again, you can't get cause from it. But here's the thing about this: it's, lots of people, tens of thousands of people, Framingham, Massachusetts. They followed them for a long time, and they're still doing it. The people who were the sick, I'm sorry, the people who ate the most fat were the sickest quintile, the sickest 20%. The people that ate the second largest quantity of saturated fat were, let me see if I get this right. They were, okay, the people that ate the most amount of fat were the sickest, but the people that ate the second most amount of fat were the healthiest, or the second healthiest. Okay. So that just proves right there. I can't remember if they were the healthiest or the second healthiest quintile. So that just proves that saturated fat does not mean you get, sickness or illness from it. It's always this. It's always sugar plus fat. It's always sugar plus protein.
Mhm.
It's sugar, 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 destroying the fat, turning it into what I call cluster bombs, or it's the sugar destroying the protein. So remove the sugar, and then you can choose to be a vegan. You can choose to go into ketosis. You can choose paleo. Just keep the sugar out,
And when you
right?
say
And then
sugar, are you talking about obviously processed sugar, honey, agave, which, I mean, everyone thinks agave is healthy. It's horrible. It's like 90% fructose, which is like fructose hijacks the brain and makes us crave and consume more calories and more sugar. So all the, maple syrup, so all the natural sort of quote unquote healthy sugar, get rid of that, and then
it
get rid of
depends.
the processed sugar. And then you're talking about, what about, and so flours, anything that's highly processed like white flour, or well, what about, like, so when it comes to whole foods, because carbohydrates are in a banana or in kale, or even cashews. So at what point is it sugar, and at what point is it like healthy carbs and then unhealthy carbs?
That's a good question. So, I mean, white bread and white sugar, white flour products, white rice, they need to go out. And then you're left with brown bread, brown rice, wild rice, that kind of stuff. It's that depends on the person. So individualized nutrition programs is part of my practice.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I have somebody who's really healthy and they want to eat bread and they exercise really well and want to eat pasta, it's like, okay, that'll be your feast day. That'll be on the days, maybe it's 2 days out of the week where you're carving it up. And then let's say 4 days out of the week, you're in ketosis. And maybe the last day of the week, you're fasting and you don't have anything. And then after about a month or two of that, they say, oh, I don't feel that good eating the pasta. I'm just going to stop it. So that's typically what happens. But, but the obvious man-made junk, that needs to be taken out.
Got it. So as close to the whole foods diet as possible.
Right.
And that's where all your nutrition is. The second something is fortified, and you think, because we think, oh, fortified is good. No, fortified means that they had to strip away all the good stuff, and then they had to add back some chemical stuff to call it fortified. So
Right.
you don't need to fortified kale,
Right.
fortified broccoli. You don't need to fortify food that already is filled with wonderful nutrients to begin with. Your patient who, or your client who fasted 20 hours a day and ate for 4 hours a day, you'd mentioned she ate coconut oil in the 4 hours that she was eating.
In the 20 hours.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the 4 hours she was eating protein and
No, yeah, a little,
vegetables and,
right, and juicing
oh,
vegetables. She had a friend that was helping
nice.
her out. Yeah.
Nice. And then during the 20 hour of not eating, if she got hungry, she could have some coconut oil, and that's what her body would, their liver converted the coconut oil to ketones.
Right. So I call it a modified fast where you just eat pure oil, and
Mm-hmm.
that'll help raise the fat in your bloodstream to help get the cells converted over from sugar burning to fat burning.
Very cool. And then the tumors just melted away.
Right. Yeah.
This is so illuminating. I really want to have
Yeah.
you back on the show.
Yeah.
Let's let listeners know exactly where they can go if they want to work with you, because I bet we've definitely got a handful of listeners that are just frothing at the bit to work
Yeah.
with you. So you've got a website called goodfat.bar, and I went to it and I immediately became hungry looking at all the gorgeous pictures of delicious. So did you design these foods?
Yeah. So I have several businesses. I have my office website. What you're talking about now is the Good Fat Bar website. I also have powernutritionpractice.com, which is where we train doctors on the business side of having a practice and also clinical. But
Nice.
goodfat.bar is before I do that, I do have to say a disclaimer. So I've had my losses too with cancer, right? So doing what
Mm,
I'm saying isn't like there's other therapies that you need to look into, hyperbaric oxygen therapy and stuff, but I consult people on that. So
mm-hmm.
it's not like 100% guaranteed, right?
Well, but
So,
diet is, with the fuel we put into our body every day really plays a difference in cancer. You're either feeding the
oh
cancer or
yeah,
you're starving the cancer. I saw my friend do this. She did the ketogenic diet. She lost 80 pounds and she was able to stop the growth of her very aggressive breast cancer.
oh boy,
And
yeah,
then and she did a bunch of other stuff, and it was not just the ketogenic, but that was a big part of her being able to combat the tumor.
right, yeah,
And thank God she's still alive and kicking. And now she doesn't do ketogenic, but she eats like a whole foods and eats healthy fats, and so she did all that, and I saw how well it worked, and she got her labs like monthly and saw the cancer went from raging out of control growth to completely halting the growth in its tracks. And I think that
nice,
a big part of it was her integrating the properly done ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting. So I absolutely agree with you that
right,
it's not the silver bullet, but it's definitely a bullet we need in our chamber. So you've got
yeah,
this, delicious healthy fats, and I see that it would be, great, especially for kids, because
right,
how do you get a kid with epilepsy to go keto? So you've got some neat vegan, gluten-free, real ingredients,
Right.
non-GMO. So that's
Right. So
good
these are
good
yeah,
fat dot bar.
right. So these are based on that formula I was saying, a 2-to-1 ratio of fat versus protein plus carbs. But some of them, like, so I have ketodemia. The base of all of these is cacao butter, raw, unprocessed from Peru, organic cacao
Nice.
butter, right? And so then we add in some essential oils. Some of them have, like, we got cinnamon, and then we got some nuts. We got ketodemia, which is macadamia nuts. So the ketodemia bar is a 6.5-to-1 ratio of fat versus protein plus carbs. Super, super ketogenic. Um, and then we also have a couple new ones coming out. We will have one called banana nut bread, and another one that's peanut butter dark chocolate. So these are like 5-to-1 ratio, 6-to-1 ratio. So, and now they melt at 92 degrees. That's cacao butter. It melts at 92 degrees, but they're super flavorful. And I was looking around on the marketplace, like, what are the convenient, healthy fat snacks, like good fats that you can carry around? It's simpler than avocados. You can't really carry around a stick of butter in your purse. And so I have a couple friends, we co-own this company, and there you have it. It's the Good Fat Company with the good
Nice.
fat bars. Yeah.
Very cool. And then for those who want to work with you, they can go to what is your website for those who want to work with you? Is it
Yeah.
then NHCAA?
It's the.
I'm
So,
sorry. I'm looking at it
yeah,
all squished together. Okay. The NHCAA.com.
right. Which stands for the Nutritional Healing Center Ann Arbor.
All right. But people around the world could work with you, right? They could get on Skype.
Right. Yeah, we do long distance consultations. Yeah.
Nice. Excellent. Well, I want to have you back on the show. I'd love to dive deeper into this. I think you are a wealth of knowledge, especially since so many of my listeners are really like they feel like they're just throwing darts in the dark,
Right.
where they've been to so many practitioners and they feel at their wits' end. And since you have seen that lactic acidosis is really at the root of almost everything, that I think that this is just such a big topic we need to dive deeper in. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. Is there anything else? And by the way, for the listeners, please go to the show notes of today's podcast, as the links to everything that Dr. Darren Schmidt does is going to be the show notes of today's podcast at learntruehealth.com. Is there anything else that you'd like to share to wrap up today's interview?
Well, yeah, I mean, my proudest work, to be honest, it's my YouTube channel. And it sort of chronologically documents my discoveries over the last
Nice.
2 years. Right. So check out my YouTube channel.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your
And
YouTube channel's name?
uh Nutritional Healing A2. Just go on YouTube and search my name.
Okay. I'll
Yeah.
make sure that we have the link to your YouTube channel in the show notes of the podcast so that people can easily access it and subscribe. I feel that my over 100 or 250 episodes of my podcast has been sort of documenting my discoveries as I
Oh
interview
yeah.
all these experts. And so it's really neat to go jump on your your show on YouTube and go way back to the beginning and follow you as you uncover, because your head is so much in the science of the last 100 years and all the discoveries, and then you take all that and then you actually apply it and you get to see clinically that it's working, and then you get to come share it with us on your YouTube channel. So that's really exciting, 'cause to have that balance of all the science and then all the actual clinically seeing it applied, and then of course you're applying it to your own body and your own healing. So I'll definitely make sure the link to your YouTube channel is there for everyone to explore. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. This has
You're
been
welcome.
completely eye-opening. I can't wait to have you back.
Thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun.
Hello, true health seeker. Have you ever thought about becoming a health coach? Do you love learning about nutrition and how we can shift our lifestyle and our diet so that we can gain optimal health and happiness and longevity? Do you love helping your friends and family to solve their health problems and to figure out what they can do to eat healthier? Are you interested in becoming someone who can grow their own business, support people in their success? Do you love helping people? You might be the perfect candidate to become a health coach. I highly recommend checking out the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. I just spent the last year in their health coaching certification program, and it really blew me away. It was so amazing. I learned over 100 dietary theories. I learned all about nutrition, but from a standpoint of how we can help people to shift their life and shift their lifestyle to gain true holistic health. I definitely recommend you check them out. You can Google Institute for Integrative Nutrition or IIN and give them a call, or you can go to learntruehealth.com/coach and you can receive a free module of their training to check it out and see if it's something that you'd be interested in. Be sure to mention my name, Ashley James, and the Learn True Health podcast, because I made a deal with them that they will give you the best price possible. I highly recommend checking it out. It really changed my life to be in their program, and I'm such a big advocate that I wanted to spread this information. We need more health coaches. In fact, health coaching is the largest growing career right now in the health field. So many health coaches are getting in and helping people, because you can work in chiropractic offices, doctors' offices, you can work in hospitals, you can work online through Skype and help people around the world. You can become an author. You can go into the school system and help your local schools shift their programs to help children be healthier. You can go into senior centers and help them to shift their diet and lifestyle to best support them in their success and their health goals. There's so many different available options for you when you become a certified health coach. So check out IIN, check out the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, mention my name, get the best deal, give them a call, and they'll give you lots of free information and help you to see if this is the right move for you. Classes are starting soon. The next round of classes are starting at the end of the month. So you're going to want to call them now and check it out. And if you know anyone in your life who would be an amazing coach, please tell them about it. Being a health coach is so rewarding, and you get to help so many people.